So this is the pages that were circulating in the Intel community that was released by BuzzFeed. It's in a form where you can easily see and understand it and follow along as I read these 5 pages, which takes up 33 pages on this video. It covers the BuzzFeed stuff and the allegations of perversions involving what's referred to as yellow rain. The pages 33 are numbered forwards and counting down backwards as well. And this graphic just shows you how the 6 pages correspond with my video screen. Page 1 on the pages equals 8 pages of my video screen. Trump, Russian spies and the infamous Golden Shower memos. Confidential, sensitive source. Company Intelligence Report 2016/080. U.S. presidential election. Republican candidate Donald Trump's activities in Russia and his compromising relationship with the Kremlin. Summary. The Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years. Their aim, which was endorsed by Putin, has been to encourage splits and divisions within the Western alliance. So far, Trump has declined various sweetener real estate business deals that have been offered to him in Russia in order to further the cultivation of him. However, he and his inner circle have accepted a regular flow of intelligence from the Kremlin, including intel on his Democratic and other political rivals. A former top Russian intelligence officer claims that the FSB has compromised Trump through his activities in Moscow sufficiently enough to be able to blackmail him. According to several knowledgeable sources, his conduct in Moscow has included perverted sexual acts which had been arranged and monitored by the FSB. A dossier of compromising materials on Hillary Clinton has also been collected by the Russian intelligence services over many years and mainly comprised bugged conversations she had on various visits to Russia and intercepted phone calls, rather than any embarrassing conduct. The dossier is controlled by the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov directly on Putin's orders. However, it has not as of yet been distributed abroad, including to Trump. Russian intentions for its deployment are still unclear. Details. Speaking to a trusted compatriot in June 2016, sources A and B, a senior Russian foreign ministry official and a former top-level Russian intelligence officer who's still active inside the Kremlin, respectively, said that the Russian authorities had been cultivating and supporting U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump for at least 5 years. Source B asserted that the Trump operation was both supported and directed by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Its aim was to sow discord and disunity within the U.S. itself, but more especially within the transatlantic alliance, which was viewed as inimical to Russia's interests. Source C, a senior Russian financial officer, said that the Trump operation should be seen in terms of Putin's desire to return Russia to its 19th century great power politics, which were anchored upon countries' interests rather than ideals-based international order, which was established after World War II. He had overheard Putin talking in this way to close associates on several occasions. 2. In terms of specifics, Source A confided that the Kremlin had been feeding Trump and his team valuable intelligence on his opponents, including Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, for several years. This was confirmed by Source D, a close associate of Trump who had organized and managed his recent trips to Moscow, and who reported also in June 2016 that this Russian intelligence had been very helpful. 3. However, there were other aspects of Trump's engagement with the Russian authorities. One which had borne much fruit for them was to exploit Trump's personal obsession and sexual perversions in order to attain suitable compromat, which means compromising material, on him, according to Source D, where he had been present. Trump's perverted conduct in Moscow included hiring the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where he knew President and Miss Obama, whom he hated, had stayed on one of their official trips to Russia. He enjoyed defiling the bed where they had slept by employing a number of prostitutes to perform what was called a golden shower, which is a urination show in front of him. The hotel was known to be under FSB control, with microphones and concealed cameras in all of the main rooms in order to record anything that they wanted to. The Kremlin's cultivation operation on Trump also had comprised of offering him various lucrative real estate development business deals in Russia, especially in relation to the ongoing 2018 World Cup soccer tournament. However, so far, for reasons unknown, Trump had not taken up any of those offers. 4. The Moscow Ritz-Carlton episode involving Trump, which was just reported and described above, was confirmed by source E, name redacted, who said that he, and several other staff members were aware of the deviant behavior at the time it was occurring, and subsequently he believed that it had happened in 2013. Source E provided an introduction for a company ethnic Russian operative to Source F, a female staffer at the hotel when Trump had stayed there, who also confirmed the story. Speaking separately in June 2016, Source B, the former top-level Russian intelligence officer, asserted that Trump's unorthodox behavior in Russia over the years had provided the authorities there with enough embarrassing material on the now Republican presidential candidate to be able to blackmail him if they so wished. 5. Asked about the Kremlin's reported intelligence feed to Trump over recent years and rumors about a Russian dossier of compromat on Hillary Clinton being circulated, Source B confirmed the file's existence. He confided in a trusted compatriot that it had been collated by Department K of the FSB for many years, dating back to her husband Bill's presidency, and comprised mainly eavesdropping conversations of various sorts, rather than details and evidence of unorthodox or embarrassing behavior by her. Some of the conversations were from bugged comments Miss Clinton had made on her various trips to Russia, and they focused mostly on things that she had said which contradicted her current position on various issues. Others were mostly probably from phone interceptions. 6. Continuing on this theme, Source G, a senior Kremlin official, confided that the Clinton dossier was controlled exclusively by Chief Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who was responsible for compiling and handling it on the explicit instructions of Putin himself. The dossier, however, had not as of yet been made available abroad, including to Trump or his campaign team. At present, it was unclear what Putin's intentions were in this regard. June 20th, 2016. Confidential, sensitive source. Russia cybercrime. A synopsis of Russian state-sponsored and other cyber-offensive criminal operations. Summary. Russia has an extensive program of state-sponsored offensive cyber operations. External targets include foreign governments and big corporations, especially banks. The FSB takes the lead on cyber operations within the Russian apparatus. Limited success has been achieved in attacking top foreign targets such as governments of the G7, security services, and IFIs, but much greater success has been achieved on second-tier operations through IT backdoors, using corporate leaders, employees, and other visitors to Russia. The FSB often uses coercion and blackmail to recruit the most capable cyber operatives in Russia into its state-sponsored programs. Heavy use also both wittingly and unwittingly of CIS immigrants working in Western corporations and ethnic Russians employed by neighboring governments such as Latvia. Examples cited of successful Russian cyber operations targeting senior Western business visitors provided a backdoor into important Western institutions. Example given of a U.S. citizen of Russian origin who was approached by the FSB and offered an incentive of an investment in his business when he was visiting Moscow. Problems, however, have surfaced for Russian authorities themselves encountering local hackers and cyber criminals operating outside of the Russian state's control. The central bank claims that there were over 20 serious attacks on correspondent accounts held by the CBR in 2015 comprising rubles, and those accounted for several billion in frauds. Some details given were of leading non-state Russian cyber criminal groups. Details 1. Speaking in June 2016, a number of Russian figures with detailed knowledge of national cyber crimes, both state-sponsored and otherwise, outlined the current situation in this area. A former senior intelligence officer divided Russian state-sponsored offensive cyber operations into 4 categories in order of priority. Targeting foreign, especially Western governments. Penetrating leading foreign business corporations, especially banks, domestic monitoring of the elite, and attacking political opponents both at home and abroad. The former intelligence officer reported that the Federal Security, FSB, was the lead organization within the Russian state apparatus for cyber operations. 2. In terms of the success of the Russian offensive cyber operations to date, a senior government figure reported that there had been only limited success in penetrating the first-tier foreign targets. These comprised Western, especially G7 and NATO governments, security and intelligence services, and central banks and the IFI. To compensate for the shortfall, a massive effort had been invested with much greater success in attacking the secondary targets, particularly Western private banks and the governments of smaller states allied to the West. He mentioned Latvia in this regard. Hundreds of agents either consciously cooperating with the FSB or whose personal and professional IT systems had been unwittingly compromised were recruited. Many were people who had ethnic and family ties to Russia and or who had been incentivized financially to cooperate. Such people often would receive monetary inducements or contractual favors from the Russian state or its agents in return. This had created difficulties for parts of the Russian state apparatus in obliging and indulging them. Example given, the Central Bank of Russia knowingly having to cover up for such agents and their money laundering operations through the Russian financial system. 3. In terms of the FSB's recruitment of capable cyber operatives to carry out its ideally deniable offensive cyber operations, a Russian IT specialist with direct knowledge reported in June 2016 that this was often done using coercion and blackmail. In terms of foreign agents, the FSB was approaching U.S. citizens of Russian Jewish origin on business trips to Russia. In one case, a U.S. citizen of Russian ethnicity had been visiting Moscow to attract investors in his new information technology program. The FSB clearly knew this and had offered to provide seed capital to this person in return for them being able to access and modify his IP with a view of targeting priority foreign targets by planting Trojan viruses in the software. The U.S. visitor was told that this was common practice. The FSB also had implied that they had achieved significant operational success as a result of installing cheap Russian IT games that contained their own malware. Targets then unwittingly installed that malware through their use of PGs and other platforms. 4. In a more advanced and successful FSB operation, an IT operator inside a leading Russian SOE who previously had been employed on conventional defensive IT work there had been under instructions for the last year to conduct an offensive cyber operation against a foreign director of the company. Although the latter was apparently an infrequent visitor to Russia, the FSB now successfully had penetrated his personal IT and through this had managed to access various important institutions in the West through that back door. 5. In terms of other technical IT platforms, an FSB cyber operative flagged up the Telegram enciphered commercial system as having been of especial concern and therefore heavily targeted by the FSB, not least because it was used frequently by Russian internal political activists and oppositionists. Her understanding was that the FSB now successfully had cracked this communications software and therefore it was no longer secure to use. 6. The senior Russian government figure cited above also reported that non-state sponsored cybercrime was becoming an increasing problem inside Russia for government and authorities there. The Central Bank of Russia claimed that in 2015 alone, there had been more than 20 attempts at serious cyber embezzlement of money from corresponding accounts held there, comprising several billion rubles. More generally, he understood there were about 15 major organized crime groups in the country involved in cybercrime, all of which continue to operate largely outside state and FSB control. These included the so-called Anunak, Buktrap, and Mitel organizations, dated July 26, 2015.